First of all, I should just say we do a much longer one-day version of this. So we are very much taking a bit of a snapshot of what we cover in that one day. But we hope to be able to cover some of the core elements of the program in the time we've got. Um, what we wanted just to kick off with was why fee negotiations, and I think Rachel's given us some very helpful pointers on that. But from our experience, fee negotiations is something that all lawyers at some stage are engaged in, all professionals, of course. But it's not something that our professional training typically prepares us well for. Um, we all know, I think it can be a highly stressful and demanding experience. And a lot turns on getting it right. Not least, of course, is the quality of the client relationship that might be impacted in these negotiations. It's also a factor that can, in a very competitive environment, can make a big difference to your own profitability and returns on the business. So there's a lot riding on fee negotiations, and our objective in this session is really to just address some of the challenges we think are common to practitioners in these contexts, and give you some helpful recommendations on how to approach these situations and get the most out of them with some assurance and confidence. So we approach it by talking about three general themes. Each of these we introduce with an aphorism or a saying, which sums up an element, what we describe as a core element of fee negotiations. And at the end, we'll talk about our one-day program as well. And as Rachel has said, if you have questions, we'd be very, very keen to hear. And obviously, you have a chance to put them into the chat as well. Rachel introduced us, so I'm not going to say a great deal more. I'm just going to provide a bit of context on me, and then Patrick will introduce himself. I've been working with Bignon De Keyser now for 2.5 years as a partner. Before that, I was the Chief Legal Operations Officer at Herbert Smith Freehills, a large international firm based in London. I'm still based in London now and work with UK-based clients as well as some of the other European clients that Patrick and colleagues work for in Paris and Brussels. I formerly had leadership roles in the training and development space, working with Linklaters as well as Herbert Smith Freehills. Patrick, I'll leave you to introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Richard. Yes, similar to you, 40 years of experience in professional service firms. First with Anderson as a partner, and then when Anderson collapsed, I joined EY. My area of activity was outsourcing of finance, accounting, payroll, and tax compliance role, and also having an important role in soft skills training through these two organizations. I'm also a teacher at the university in Paris.
Great, thank you. The way in which we are going to tackle this, as I said, is under three themes. And the first is we've described as the mindset, and having the right mindset. And Patrick is going to kick us off. You're going to describe, I think, for us the nature of fee negotiations and the approach you think that parties should adopt.
Yes, Richard. And this the first idea is really to change your mindset about negotiating, and don't see negotiating as a fight, but as a mutual benefit. As you may know, when you change your mindset, you change your behavior, you change your attitude. So what we would like to convince you is to enter into a negotiation room like when you joined a gaming table, and not like entering a war room, okay, and enjoy the game. You don't need a flak jacket to enter into a negotiations. The idea is to enter into the negotiation room saying that I am open to win together. I mean, with the person around me. Remember that negotiating is a second step of a selling process. You have spent an amount of time to prepare your proposal. You meet the client and he agree on your offer of services. He like your approach. You have the credential for that. And he has already a foot in in the settlement zone you need to fix with him. So the objective of this second phase is to get the second foot in the settlement zone. And for that, remember that you have the only power you have is the power of influence. You have no power of constraints. So your actions will be to try to influence the person so that it changes mindset, it changes view about your offer, etc., etc. And all what we will describe to you in the coming 25 minutes are some elements of how to influence our clients so that he also gets the ideas are, okay, let's try to win together. Having said that, Richard, let's turn now to the subject of how parties usually divide up what we might call the pie in a fee negotiations. Do you think that the party just to share it out or take another approach?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Patrick. I would approach this by taking a well-known tale of the two sisters and the orange, which you may also have come across if you've ever done any negotiating training as the ugly orange exercise. It concerns two sisters in a kitchen preparing the Christmas dinner with their mother. One is preparing the main course, one is preparing the dessert. They ask their mother for an orange. The mother discovers there is only one orange remaining in the entire house. And both sisters insist that it is critical that they have the orange for their contribution to Christmas dinner. And so the mother, almost in despair, cuts the orange into two parts, one for each sister, as the image on the left shows. But afterwards, they discover that one needed the juice and the other needed the peel for the orange zest, the juice for the sauce. So the lesson, what lesson do we draw from this? Well, if you have ever done the ugly orange negotiation exercise, the real lesson is that if we take the time to discover what the real needs of the parties actually are, then you can obtain more. If you understand the bigger picture, then the essential expectations of the parties, then you can discover what the client's real problem is, to put this into the context of fee negotiations, for instance. And it may be that the client's real problem is very different from what you had assumed. So it's a real way of testing your assumption, starting to build a much deeper understanding and picture. And as we say in this language here, it's really about moving from thinking of yourself as just a solution provider to a problem finder, trying to understand the nature of the problem that you face. So yes.
Yeah. Yes, Richard, sorry. And so continuing with you about this question of understanding the problem of the client. So fee negotiation are sometimes described as a process of setting out your argument to the other side. Is that what you would advocate based on what you said before?
Yes, that's a very good question, and I think, and I'm very guilty of this, that myself, that the temptation is that we have a position to set out, so this is what we should do, and therefore we talk. But if you are trying to increase the pie, as we just discussed, you want to get this big picture, an in-depth understanding of the context, the risk, the outcome, the potential benefits, then you need actually to take a very different approach, and that is one of questioning and listening. And also, if we can imagine the situation where you are in a conversation, every person likes to be heard. In the same way, a client, when they know you're listening carefully with attention and focus, and perceives that you're interested, feels that you are caring about them and their concerns and is more likely to continue to talk. And from that, you can start to extract information. That is, if you like, the process of active listening. Obviously, skilled questioning, open questions, questions that tease the client a bit to think about a different perspective, the what if question, for instance, or asking the client to think about if we do this, what will happen in the future, or inviting the client to think about other perspectives. So, for instance, what is your board's point of view on this particular subject? So thinking laterally about the questions, but taking that very different approach of this is if you like, a listening exercise. We're given two ears and one mouth, rather than just talking. So that would be my approach. Patrick, if you agree, what sort of approach do you think we should be taking to the listening? What is the nature of the listening that we should be practicing?
Yes, continuing on this idea that the client need to be heard. The listening we will use is a listening not to answer, it's a listening to understand. And as you say before, it's to really clearly understand what's the problem the client have. And you have all, as a lawyer, makes this experience that sometimes the client is not clear on his problem. So the more you listen, the more it could be clear. And remember that to listen to someone, you have four organs. You have your ears, you are your mind, you are your eyes, and you are your heart. With your ears and your mind, you understand the contents. With your eyes, you understand all the body language, all these signals which give you a lot of information about the perception of the person in front of you, etc., etc. And with your heart, you can approach the feeling of the person. So you can get his emotional states. So doing that, at the end, you can say to the client, I understand what you say. I understand what you feel. I understand why you talk to me about that. In other words, I know more who is a person besides the functions. I understand your frame of reference, which could be different from mine. So that means I understand how you view the situations, how you perceive the risk, how you perceive the power map around this. And so the client feels that really I'm very open to having this understanding and to share with him is problematic. And that's, again, opens the whole atmosphere of the conversations. And that I mean, the four elements of what we mentioned as the mindset, okay, the mutual benefits, how to use the pie, how to listen with empathy. Let's maybe now, Richard, move to some key behaviors.
Yeah. So so we've talked, as you said, about mindset, key behaviors that underlie fee negotiations. And I think where I wanted to start with a question to you, Patrick, was that often negotiations, I think, are characterized as a fight to win. You know, this is a sort of it's a fight. It's as one of our images shows, it's two guys in a boxing ring. What in your view, though, are the key behaviors that characterize a successful negotiation?
The quadrants, which is there, summarize the two drivers that you can use to I mean, maximize the mutual benefit of negotiations. You see, there is two axes. The horizontal axis is curiosity, and the vertical is audacity or courage. If you focus on the on the square one, okay, the square one means that you spend a lot of time to understand the client situation. So you are very keen to tailor-made approach. You accept a lot of client requirements, and so you prepare something, a solution which is the best in class for this client, and you have spent enough time so that you have a very clear understanding of the problematic and the best approach for him. Conversely, you did not have enough courage and audacity to ask for the fees which make your job profitable. Conversely, on the square 2, there you have the, I mean, capabilities to get the yes of the client with a significant amount of fees, but you don't take a lot of time to really discuss with the client his problem and to discover all the aspects of the problem. But the client, he accepts that, he follow you, maybe because you have a huge reputation or whatever. So you win financially. But the risk is that the client may feel trapped in these negotiations. And your risk is that having proposed something, some standard solution or something like that, afterwards, the client may discover that they maybe have another approach, or that what you offer is not exactly what he was expected. So he may be disappointed. Taking this approach of square 2 is like when you sell your home. You know, you sell your house, you want to get the maximum of money, you don't care about the buyer. The client is not a buyer. The client is someone you will continue to work, hopefully, and to build a long-lasting relationship. So the way we want to encourage you to go is to the square 4, where you embedded curiosity and audacity, and so you get to a mutual benefit. But for that, you need to take the time of curiosity and the courage to get what you need in terms of fees to have a profitable job. Having said that, Richard,
just sorry, Patrick, just before you move on from there, I just found it quite interesting then that you said, you know, you're trying to onboard a client, but if you negotiate with them too heavily, you could actually either lose them or create quite a negative relationship with them, even if you do onboard them after the negotiation. Like, I'm just curious to see if anybody on this call has had the experience where they've negotiated fees with the client and you've onboarded them, but it's actually created quite a sour start to your relationship. Is anyone, Edward, have you ever had any experience like that before? Steve, still?
Thank you. No, of course not. But yes, I think that there are instances whereby you might get the view that the client says we feel that's expensive once you've got into the relationship. And so therefore, perhaps the discovery to find his value wasn't as good as it should have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve, I've got Steve Siller as well. I mean, you've got a wealth of experience here, Steve, dealing with M&A and negotiations as well. Like, what experiences have you got with this sort of stuff? Because I can imagine with the intense environments you're in, you might have something quite interesting to add there too.
Yeah, many years ago, I made it my business to learn about not only marketing, but selling. And I learned that you can't sell anything. People have to decide for their reasons to buy or not buy. So I learned with one of the speakers, Vistage had, and then you brought on Mark Barazow, who teaches the Sandler selling system.
Yeah.
And I found that to be of enormous benefit because, as the two speakers today said, it involves listening and really peeling back the onion, as the orange example shows, to find the real issue and to ask questions to make sure you don't get in your own way. So I can't really say that I've had experiences where a fee quote was too high, other than if somebody needed a fee quote and it was too high, then that was really the end of it. I've also seen examples, as I'm sure everybody on this call has, where the client or prospective client has already made their decision. They're asking you for a fee quote because they want free advice and they also want to validate the fee quote they got from someone else.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. And I know Christina's just wrote a couple of comments in the chat there. So if you can just keep your eyes on the chat as well during the meeting, because some comments will appear as well. Sorry, Patrick, as you were.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Rachel. Very good point, and very nice discussions. Yes. So Richard, we were talking about finding a mutual benefit, and what I would like to highlight there is that sometimes lawyers often describe fee negotiation as a process of being forced to make concessions or compromise with their clients. What's your approach to this?
Yeah, that's thank you. It's a very interesting point, and I guess perhaps it builds a little bit on the points that Edward and Stephen were also making. I mean, it's a challenge, I think, about the question of concessions. There is a bit of a fear, I think, that concessions represent weakness. And I understand that. There is an argument, I think, that concessions which have no real impact on you and that you can, but actually mean a lot to your client, can be worth making, and they could be part of the strategy that you plan in advance of any discussion you have with the client. Typically speaking, in my experience, concessions that are made without anything given in return simply encourage behavior that asks for more concessions. And the risk then is that you get into a cycle or a pattern where you're simply giving room on the price or giving room on other aspects of the work you're going to do without any kind of compensation. If you're approaching instead this process of negotiation as a trade, where you're seeking to achieve a bargain effectively, then a request to reduce your price should really always, I think, be accompanied by a discussion around what impact this has on the scope, for instance, or the team size, or how fast you're going to do this work. Or maybe how much more the client might have to bring their own team to the table as part of the work that's required. In the same way in which if you're being asked to squeeze the time frame, then but what kind of impact does that have on price? So my point really is to emphasize that the client is usually a well-trained commercial operator. They're not, in my view, then they may be hopeful, but they're not really expecting an endless series of requests for you to provide concessions, to be greeted with a grudging silence or a grudging acceptance and then move on. This is an opportunity and should be greeted as a way to achieve some kind of return. You can't always prepare for these things in advance. And so the other point I would also make is use the opportunity to consult, use adjournments. Adjournments can be a very powerful way to just get parties to just go away, have a think, take a fresh perspective. As I said, also for you to consult, you're not alone in a negotiation. You have other partners, you have other colleagues who can be provide a very useful and valuable perspective, which, you know, sometimes you need that objectivity as well. So that would be my thought on that, Patrick. I'm sure there'll be other, it'd be interesting to hear other input on that. I wonder though, just building on that, if you, Patrick, have got thoughts on the attitude of a successful negotiator towards the people on the one hand and the issues that he or she is actually managing in a negotiation.
Yes, and Richard, you remember that since the beginning we use words like mutual benefit, share the pie, listen with empathy, have a curiosity, etc. All these encourage to collaborations. Okay, in other words, it's encouraged to be soft with the client. And as Stephen was mentioning, we don't try to sell anything. We try to let the client buy by influencing him. So we are soft with the client, and that's what we recommend. But the trap is that if we need to be soft with the client, but we need to be strong on the problem. And so the idea is to try to separate yourself in two parts. So being soft in the conversation with the client, but when you enter into talking really about the problem, you must be tough and saying, okay, you see the risk, you see the durations, you see the level of expertise you need, you see the level of investigation we need, and that's need this amount of money for us. And the idea is that we can disagree with someone without being disagreeable. And as far as you are not over-aggressive, over-insisting, exaggerating, you have more chance that the client listen to your, accept the fact that you are hard on the problem. And at least if you don't do the deal, he will remember the conversation with you, which was respectful, with a lot of professionalism, a lot of, let's say, you were robust and convincing, but he don't get. And so it's a chance for the next opportunity.
Just our last point, I think, on behaviors.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're always after easier fee negotiations. What would you describe as the best path towards achieving easier fee negotiations in terms of the behaviors you bring?
In fact, I will invite all our audience to remember that the sesame of or the magic word of a negotiation is in-depth relationship. Remember that the negotiations is arrived after maybe weeks or months of business development, weeks of months of networking, weeks or months of building relationship with a prospect, weeks of months where you have tried to become the personal business partner of an important executive. And so it's time. Time is a constrictions. And if you do that, you have much more chance when you enter into the negotiation room that the person, he know you as a partner, he know your firm, he know your reputations, he have experience working with you, he know your pricing model. And so you go straight to the point. So a good negotiation, to have easy negotiations, you have to never stop as a firm to do business development, networking, and building relationship with prospect. Otherwise, you will be in the situation on the right of this slide where you will answer a request for proposal. The client will read it. He will make sense. He will invite you to pitch. And during this pitch, he will, for the first time, meet you as a person, meet your firm, discover who you are, discover your credentials, see through your request for your answer to your proposal what's the fee, and then you are at the step one of building a relationship. So the chance to win is much lower. So think about that. A good negotiation starts by business development, networking, and building relationships. Having said that, Richard, I think we'll go for a short break. Open discussions, questions from any one of you.
And just to be warned, if you don't ask questions, I will ask you. I will come to you because we want to make sure that we're creating a bit of an engaging discussion here. So just getting something from you is useful. Rick, Bennett, Thrasher, this is your life, isn't it? Over to you. Got anything you want to add?
Anything, any experience you would like to share with us, it's fine, and with all of you, because that's how we learn.
I mean, Daniel.
Typically it does create tension whenever you're negotiating, and then ultimately it goes differently from what you expect. I mean, I wanted to share that earlier, that was stated, because obviously you win the work, but you do have something in the backset of your mind saying, did I really want it after I gave away my fees where I wanted them to be? So that's something that I wanted to share.
Thanks, Rick. Daniel, I mean, you're in Latin America. Obviously each jurisdiction and region is going to have a slightly different landscape for this sort of stuff. So we've heard from a little bit from Edward in Bermuda and then Steve Siller in New York. But what have you got anything you can add, Daniel?
Yes, well, I think I keep in mind what they say, that this is something that will take negotiating will take many attempts. No, first is business development, but conversations, but sending the pitch, but talking about showing your team, your infrastructure as a law firm, your experience in similar cases. No, and then once you're in, well, you will have to compete with other firms, not only on the fee itself, but also on the way of charging that fee. No, it's also very important. Some years ago, it was very in M&A transaction was very common, or it was even the client will even take it as granted that the law firm will be charging by on an hourly rate. No, and now it's more and more common that they will ask you for a cap, or that they will ask you for number of hours, but on a weekly basis, just to keep on the radar how much is costing. No, so yeah, it's changing, and you have to be very flexible. No, with the clients to gain their trust and to do the work.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Daniel. I've also got Luis Lopez, I believe in Colombia, who's got his hand up. There you go. Here he comes.
Hello, everyone. Luis Lopez from Colombia. Yes, my question, it will be more, what do you think, or what opinion do you have regarding getting the client involved in the negotiation before? Because I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I always send a draft proposal to the client, right? For him to I don't know, modify or add or eliminate. So I think being like in a negotiation, just to share with the client, with all the prospect client, what they need and what the expectation are. So I always send a draft. We have a couple more versions of the final proposal before we do or we do not finish the negotiation. What do you think about it?
Richard, I may start and let Richard complete. Luis, for me, I think we have one alternative is after the first meeting with the client, you can say, okay, let me put in writing my understanding of the problem, how I propose you to solve that, how I think we can organize the project, and let's meet again to review that. So you send to him, let's say, more than a letter understanding. So the approach, the team you think is necessary, the risk, the timing you estimate, etc., and maybe some questions that you would like to you need to complete, and then you meet with the clients, and then first of all, you get the first impression of the client about what's his perception of your offer, and then in the second phase, he will ask for the fee, and you have prepared that, of course. But you do that through another meeting and not directly in the request for proposal. So it's really depends on the context, but of course, sending a proposal with fee is a more common approach. But my preference is sometimes to send this type of letter of understanding. Let's go for another discussion. And sometimes you come back to the second meeting with one of your experts, someone else who complements. So we see that, I don't know, you talk about tax with clients, but there is a tax maybe especially international. So you join with another partner. And so the client sees that you have understood the importance of this, and you continue. Does that make sense to you, Luis?
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. We are coming up. We're sort of got maybe about 10 or 15 minutes left, I think, really, because we're aware that you guys bill your hours, so this is a whole hour out your day. So we won't take up too much more of your time, but it's quite nice to just carry on the discussion for a little bit longer. Richard, Patrick, if you want to continue.
Yeah, thanks.
Richard?
Yes. So let's move to now, after having talked about the mindset, the key behavior, let's look at about, we have four points of importance, what we name focus. And to start with you, Richard, we talk a lot about empathic listening and about this empathic listening. What should this empathic listening be focused on at first?
Yes, so thank you, Patrick. And I'm just, it really goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the context of listening and questioning, which is that this is really all about trying to change the emphasis from stating our position and trying to use these skills to better understand what is going on behind the scenes, if you like. So it's really about trying to understand the why. Why is the client committed to this position? Is there, for example, some relationship that they have with procurement in their business that is driving them to a particular, trying to achieve, for example, a particular fee reduction? You can only get at that by trying to understand the nature of the relationship with procurement. You're not going to be able to understand why the client is driving on, for example, the scope of the work without really getting into the question of clearly what the client is trying to achieve with this matter in the broader context of their business. So engaging the conversation in these directions is the best way to try and get at the underlying interests. You know, what are the expectations of the client? Maybe what's the history of the client in dealing with this kind of work? That might well be informing them in terms of their view on the type of fee structure they want to put in place, for instance. So it's really trying to focus on the interests of the client rather than the formal position. That way you're getting at the underlying motivation and expectations. So that's my view. And I would just, Patrick, perhaps invite you to talk to us a little bit about the strategy the negotiator should adopt, because in my experience, sometimes negotiators aren't brilliant at preparing their own approach. So what do you think the negotiator's approach should be in preparing their, you know, where their position, where they're going to start?
Thanks, Richard. Yes, I will insist on the fact that, of course, preparation is key to negotiations. However, many times we prepare ourselves to win. Okay. And my recommendation is that we have to be prepared to succeed or not succeed. The word about that, familiar in negotiation environment, is BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. The idea is how I will meet my own interest without reaching an agreement. And if you prepare your negotiation with these two scenarios, what's happened first is it's reduce the level of uncertainty, because you know what will happen if you win, and you know what will happen if you don't win. So the level of uncertainty is reduced. And I strongly recommend you to discuss this no deal possibility with your fellow partners, with your management, so that it became a sort of collective decisions. Remember that we are more intelligent collectively than individually. And so when you enter into the negotiation room, you are less stressed, you are more relaxed, because you know what will be the outcome of a win or no win. And here, you need also to think about what will be the effect of a no deal for the client. For you, if it's a no deal, what could happen? Maybe you will have a planning which is easier for your associates. Maybe you will have more time to work on your existing client. Maybe you will have more time to work on another proposal in process. Maybe you will have more time to work on networking, more time to work on a new project, etc. So think about this opportunity for no win sometime, instead of being overstressed. And what about your client? For your client, try to anticipate, if it's a no deal with us, who could be our competitor? Will he postpone this? Is it feasible or not? Will he give up? Is it possible? Will he do it alone? Is it possible? So as far as you envisage all these possibility, you have all this in mind during the negotiation, and individually you arrive more relaxed. And as you are more relaxed, I mean, your behavior also are more welcome by the clients. Having said that, another focus, Richard, that it's important. You talked before about being creative, about this famous pie. How should the negotiator, you think, get creative in these negotiations, and especially about the pie?
Yeah. So my sort of best answer to that question is that if you go into a negotiation with a range of options in terms of different ways in which you can, if you like, cut that pie, you give yourself a great deal more flexibility, a great deal more you can discuss that will really help to move the negotiation along. And you can imagine and work on these options in advance. They can be, for example, in relation to fees, alternative fee arrangements. We've talked already a little bit about types of fees, cap fees, and so on. Discretionary elements could allow you to, for example, build in some success element into your fee outcome, or abort arrangements if the transaction fails. The purpose of the options that you're bringing to the table is to give you more to discuss with. Otherwise, there's a real risk of the negotiation coming down to a singular focus on price. And as soon as you do that, it gives you far less room to come to a fruitful outcome. So this gives you more room. It also demonstrates, or can demonstrate, your own listening process. It can demonstrate that you are paying attention to what the client is concerned about. You're bringing different considerations to bear that will impact on things that are important to the client, like scope or timing, assessment of risk, or the like. So options is my kind of recommendation, really, for how you can bring that creative dimension to negotiations, which is much more likely to achieve an outcome than or as opposed to the deadlock that can otherwise face you.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, so about options, creativity, the last point of focus we would like to discuss is this question that fee negotiation very easily gets stuck on number, the issue of price. And having walked through all what we have said there, how should party prepare themselves for that?
Yeah, and actually, I wanted to pick up on this. Steve has put a question into the Steve Sill has put a question into the chat where he's asked or said, if the fee's the only issue, then the client is commoditizing your service. Your choice is to commoditize yourself or not. And if not, you need the skill set to discuss that with a client. And I think that, to me, is really behind this whole theme here. It may be that it's a very difficult process to escape from that focus purely on price. And as Steve said, I think if that's where the discussion goes, then essentially it is just about it's almost a kind of commodification of your service. I mean, I always advocate trying to move beyond that, because I don't think, for the most part, we're in the business we're in as professional advisors to sell a pure commodity. We're bringing other values to play, but you've got to work hard to if you like, sell that, prove that to the client. And whether the client is the individual or the client is the organization, sometimes the interests are not the same, or indeed other stakeholders in the business. And the kinds of things which can really reinforce the underlying value as opposed to the pure price will be things that I think are what brings the client to you in the first place as a professional advisor. So your credibility. So that can be things like you know, the organizations you've worked for, the reputation you have as a professional advisor, your reliability, your ability to deliver on time, your accessibility, your availability, the insight you bring, the partners that you will bring to the table in the relationship with the client, but also very importantly, your intimacy. You know, do you have that ability to build a relationship, to create the empathy? You know, people buy from people they like. So if you can create that dimension, that's going to be a much stronger proposition, and trying to reinforce the value that the client can see in going with you, and settling the rate that you think is a fair reflection of all those qualities. So so those would be the way in which I would try and address this issue, and move it beyond purely a focus on price.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah. So we walked through these 3 themes and 12 aphorisms, which in a way I could say it's an appetizer. Richard, tell us more about how our one-day seminar works.
Sure. Yeah, no, look, I will keep this brief because obviously we want to allow time for questions. So the thing I really wanted to emphasize is that we don't have time for experience simulations in this session, but we would do a lot more of that in the one day. We also do quite a lot of pre-work, so we encourage people to answer some questions, do some self-assessment, and really help to focus the day around what they're interested in, what the key issues for them, and indeed their own, you know, areas of concern. So we build on some of the themes we've discussed, but also cover other areas. So it's very much an opportunity to build and develop out, as I said, get much more practical, hands-on exposure. But as I said, I think it'd be great just to take an opportunity now to open this up wider. I picked up, I think, Steve's question or point earlier. I don't know if there's others, maybe Rachel, that we can also take at this point.
Yeah, has anyone got anything they want to add to this? We've just got a few more minutes left, so it'd be good to get a couple of questions from you. Richard, maybe how
one idea I was just going to raise was that, because I think it's sort of, we've touched on it a bit, but the question been raised with me by a client I was dealing with recently. If you get into a dispute with a client that just basically objects to paying the fee because it's higher than they're expecting, or they simply don't want to pay the outstanding balance, how would you approach this? Well, first off, we discussed earlier a little bit this issue of scope creep, and I think it was Luis who was making the points about fixed fees. Being very cautious, have we actually, if there's scope creep, have we in fact negotiated or agreed the scope creep with the client? Because that's often the point in question, is that the client hasn't agreed the additional work that's been done. But if we have got that on the table already, then so what are the options? I think there probably are 3. One is you basically play hardball with the client. You insist on being paid, explaining the value you bring. A second could be to explain the issues, be prepared maybe to give a small discount as a one-off. Or the third would be conceding the amount for relationship reasons. If you like, it's a kind of sacrifice on the grounds of trying to maintain the ongoing relationship. My own view is that I would probably not do that third, unless this is perhaps the first year of the relationship with the client and you feel that it's essential in order to keep the relationship on the go. My preference would be that second, which would be seeking to get the client to understand how we've got to where we've got to, and then looking to, as a way of seeking to achieve some agreement on this to offer some kind of degree of discount to get to closure. But as a lot of this will turn on the context and the specific nature of the client and the relationship you've got with them. But interested in other views on that as well.
Okay. I mean, if no one has anything else they want to add, it's not a problem, because what I am going to do is send an email, and I'll give you Richard's contact details, so you can reach out to him directly if you want to continue this discussion, or potentially ask them to bring this into your own firm and maybe host this for your own companies as well. I'm sure they'll be open to a discussion about that. Yeah,
no, we'd be very happy if there's to be much more selective or specific, whatever. Again, it comes back to what are the interests, what are the concerns that the firm has. Maybe there are specific areas that they're interested in exploring.
Okay. I know a couple of people have just dropped off the call and they've sent their apologies for leaving, but I mean, there's, I think that has gone quite well. Like I say, you can reach out to Richard. He is one of our trusted partners who we formed a relationship with over several years now, and he does also attend our conferences. So please make sure you connect with him on LinkedIn and via email, because the likelihood of you crossing paths again is quite high.